Like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get new video updates.
Ukraine latest: Russia strikes Ukraine's east and south. As civilians evacuate from Mariupol steel plant, Russia has carried out missile strikes across southern and eastern Ukraine, Ukrainian officials say, and some women and children were evacuated from a steel plant in the besieged city of Mariupol after sheltering there for more than a week. Moscow has turned its focus towards Ukraine's south and east after failing to capture its capital, Kyiv, in a 9-week assault that has flattened cities, killed thousands of civilians and forced more than 5 million Ukrainian citizens to flee abroad. Russia's forces have captured the town of Kherson in the south, giving them a foothold just 100 kilometres north of Russian-annexed Crimea, and have mostly occupied Mariupol, a strategic eastern port city on the Azov Sea. Moscow declared victory in Mariupol on April 21, even as hundreds of Ukrainian troops and civilians took shelter underneath the Azovstal steelworks. The United Nations has urged an evacuation deal and, on Saturday, a Ukrainian fighter inside said some 20 women and children had made it out. "We are getting civilians out of the rubble with ropes, it is the elderly, women and children," said the fighter, Sviatoslav Palamar, referring to wreckage within the 4 square kilometres plant. Mr Palamar said both Russia and Ukraine were respecting a local ceasefire, and that he hoped the evacuated civilians would be transferred to the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia to the northwest. Russia's RIA Novosti news agency reported on Saturday that 25 civilians, 19 adults and 6 children, had been evacuated from the Azovstal steelworks, but gave no further details. There was no confirmation from the UN about the evacuations. Hundreds of Ukrainians remain inside the underground corridors of the steelworks, according to Ukrainian officials. Odesa's main airport destroyed to the west, in Odesa, which has, so far, been relatively unscathed in the war, a Russian missile launched from Crimea destroyed the main airport's runway, said Maksym Marchenko, the city's regional governor. No one was hurt, he added. Ukraine's military said the airport could no longer be used, and Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, vowed in a late-night video address to rebuild the airport. Odesa will never forget Russia's behaviour towards it, Mr Zelenskyy said. There was no comment on the strike from Moscow, whose forces have sporadically targeted Odesa, Ukraine's third-largest city. Read more. Last week, 8 people were killed in a Russian strike on the city, Ukrainian officials said. Moscow's assault in the south is aimed, in part, at linking the area with Crimea as it pushes for complete control over Ukraine's eastern Donbas region. Parts of Donbas' 2 provinces, Luhansk and Donetsk, were already controlled by Russian-backed separatists before Moscow's February 24 invasion. In his address, Mr Zelenskyy said Russia was gathering additional forces for new attacks against our military in the east of the country, and trying to increase pressure in Donbas. Zelenskyy delivers message in Russian during his nightly address. Mr Zelenskyy switched to speaking in Russian to urge Russian troops not to fight in Ukraine, saying even their generals expect that thousands more of them will die. The president accused Moscow of recruiting new soldiers with little motivation and little combat experience so that units gutted earlier in the war can be thrown back into battle. Every Russian soldier can still save his own life, Mr Zelenskyy said. It is better for you to survive in Russia than to perish on our land. Ukraine exchanges prisoners with Russia. Read more. Meanwhile, Ukraine carried out a prisoner exchange with Russia on Saturday, with 7 soldiers and 7 civilians coming home, Deputy Prime Minister Iryna Vereshchuk said in an online post. One of the soldiers was a woman who is 5 months pregnant, she added. She did not say how many Russians had been transferred. The 2 nations have swapped prisoners several times during the conflict. On Thursday, Russia handed over 33 Ukrainian soldiers, including 13 officers, in a different exchange, Ms Vereshchuk said. 5 of the troops exchanged on Thursday had been wounded, she said. Russia stole thousands of tons of grain on Saturday. Ukraine's deputy agriculture minister said that Russian forces have stolen several 100,000 tons of grain in areas the Russians occupy. Speaking to Ukrainian national TV, Taras Vysotsky expressed concern that most of what he said was 1.5 million tons of grain stored in occupied territory could have also been stolen by Russian forces. To date, we have confirmed the fact that several 100,000 tons of grain crops were taken out of the Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, Donetsk and Luhansk regions, he said. Ukraine is a major grain producer and the Russian invasion has curtailed exports, pushed up world grain prices,